it turned out my roommate also accepted Christ that same weekend, entirely separate from me. But he accepted Christ, and we compared notes and found out we'd become believers. And there were 2 or 3 other folks that had become believers fairly recently, and we started getting together. And one of us asked, what does a Christian do on Friday night? And Friday night, again, for pagans, I knew what to do. We were masters at it. We knew exactly how to go out in revelry and carousing and all the pagan things. But what does a Christian do? What does a follower of Jesus do on a Friday night? And so we kind of, all of us being young and naive, said, well, I don't know. Why don't we get together at one of our dorm rooms? Let's read the Bible, we'll pray, and then we'll play cards. And so we did that. And then we did that for a couple of weeks, and 4 of us getting together, reading the Bible, praying a little bit, and then playing a card game. And it was great. It seemed okay. This answers the question. Well, the next thing we knew, this number of 4 young men became 8, and then it became 12. And soon, week after week after week, there were new Christians being added to this little circle of new Christians. And we grew, over time, we grew to about 160 students, most of whom had either come to Christ recently or who had, in fact, rededicated their life to Christ or at least gotten serious about their walk with Christ. Anyway, we met together, and over time, we would not just read the Bible, we began to teach the Bible. We prayed, we worshiped, we started taking the Lord's Supper together, and we actually practiced a kind of discipline when we would admonish and correct each other in our walks with God. And this was, I look back on this as the, like say, early 70s. It was maybe the most enjoyable single time in my entire Christian experience because, like many of us can identify with, it was new, it was fresh, it was joyful. There was a fresh discovery every day, it seemed like. And now I'll tell you, looking back, we began to realize, and I certainly began to realize, that this was actually a New Testament church. That was not our intention. We did not say that. We didn't claim it. We wouldn't have claimed it. But it was something that God was doing as he was bringing disciples together. They were gathering. And when the disciples gather, the word ecclesia means gathering. We translated church, but it really means gathering. When we gather and we began to do the things that churches do, that was a New Testament church. And we saw the fruit of a New Testament church. Well, from that, I began to get the sense that the Lord wanted me to be involved in some sort of formal ministry. And I left the University of Tennessee and went over to a missionary training school a couple hours east of us for 2 years, where, among other things, I met my wife. Thank God for that. And I also learned the English Bible. Now, they did teach us a little Greek and Hebrew, but I learned the English Bible. And when we graduated, instead of going to the mission field directly, we went to an island off the coast of South Carolina where we planted a church there that God blessed. Today, it's probably 2,000 or 3,000 members. But back then, it was started out, it was like 2 or 3 families. But over time, God would add to our number those who were being saved, those who were seeking an obedient walk with him. And this church began to grow and grow. And for 7 years, I was the pastor. We merged with another church, which took us to a much larger number, and I was the co-pastor. But I loved it. Let me just say very clearly, I love teaching the Word of God. I love shepherding people. I don't like church administration. I don't like religion. But I love the core of what it meant to be a pastor. In fact, I still consider myself, in even my calling to business as mission, I am at heart a shepherd teacher, a pastor teacher, as Paul laid out in Ephesians chapter 4.